The night Mia left, it rained so hard the gutters overflowed. Like the sky couldn't help but grieve with me. She didn't even wait for the final payment on the food truck. Just packed her suitcase red leather, expensive, loud, and stood in our tiny kitchen with her arms crossed. Like, I was late for an appointment she never wanted to make. You're not going anywhere, she said, like it was a fact. Like my dream, my little food truck fantasy was a childish sketch she could erase with one swipe of lipstick. I remember blinking at her, soaked to the bone from hauling crates of bulk rice and cheap beef cuts into the walk-in. We're close, Mia. One good month, and she laughed. One good month. Tom, it's been 3 years of scraping by and watching you throw yourself at a fantasy with nothing to show but debt and grease stains. I wanted to tell her that the recipes were getting better, that the local paper had done a write-up last week, that people were beginning to remember my name, not just the food. But her eyes told me she wasn't looking for hope. She was looking for a way out, and I handed it to her with silence. She left me a note, said I was too nice to hate, too broke to love, said I'd thank her someday. For a while, I believed that. I kept the note in my back pocket like a talisman. Some nights, I'd reread it after a 14-hour shift, slinging garlic chicken rice bowls to drunk college kids, hands raw and knees buckling. I'd trace the words too broke to love like they were scripture. And slowly, I started to believe that maybe food wasn't enough, that maybe passion couldn't outcook poverty. Until the night I sold out in 42 minutes. It was a fluke. At first, a TikTok kid with 1 million followers tried my pork belly bao, posted a video moaning like it was a Michelin star meal. The line wrapped around the block the next day. Then came the investors, then the commercial kitchen, then the restaurant. I didn't tell anyone, not Mia, not even my mother, who never thought food was a real future. I just worked. I worked until the soft open was sold out for 3 weeks straight, until the newspaper that once ignored me put me on the front page of the weekend dining section, until the landlord offered me the billboard above the building at a discount, saying, "You're gonna want it. Trust me." And I knew, right? Then I knew what I'd put on it. Because some meals are best served hot, but revenge tastes better. Slow cooked, plated beautifully, and served with a side of spotlight. The billboard went up 2 days before our grand opening, and I made damn sure Mia would see it. It was simple, just 6 words, white block letters against a matte black background. Still too broke to love, Mia. No business name, no logo, no phone number, just that. The building sat on the edge of town, right off Easton and Fifth, the same street Mia took every morning to her corporate PR job, the one she landed 3 weeks after leaving me. I knew because, for a while, I kept tabs, not out of obsession, out of survival. If I saw her, I knew how to brace myself, how to tuck the ache under my ribs before it bloomed too big to hide. When the billboard went up, I expected silence, maybe a flurry of texts from mutual friends, maybe nothing. What I got was fire. Social media exploded. People took pictures, made memes, tagged friends. Who hurt you? Chef. This is the most polite drag I've ever seen. Forget soft openings. This is a hard reset. And then the DMs started, some from women who remembered me from pop-up nights, some from guys asking for interviews for their revenge podcast. But most of all, I heard from people who had been told, like I had, that love didn't come cheap, that dreams cost too much, that if you couldn't pay your way into someone's heart, you didn't deserve a seat at the table. It was bigger than Mia now. It was ours. But in the quiet moments when the dishwasher hummed and the kitchen fell into its post-shift lull, I thought about her eyes, The way she used to look at me when I tested out spice blends on her arm. The way she used to say, "One day, I'll tell our kids we started in a food truck." I wondered if she remembered that now. I wondered if she saw the billboard and laughed, or if it cracked something in her. And then, 3 days after the grand opening, I saw her. She walked in like nothing had happened. Her heels clicked too loud against the tile, and her coat was still the shade of rust she'd always loved. Said it made her feel dangerous, but warm. She stood at the host stand like she belonged, but her eyes scanned the space like she wasn't sure she did. My manager froze. I stepped forward. Her mouth opened slightly when she saw me. "Hi, Tom," she said, soft and measured. I didn't smile, didn't frown either, just looked her dead in the eye and asked, "Table for one." And that's when it hit me. Not the anger, not even the satisfaction, the weight, the question that burned quietly underneath all the success and clever signs and perfect plating. When you win and they come back, what do you owe them? Forgiveness, a seat, or just the bill? And for the first time since she left, I didn't know the answer. She hesitated. I could see it in the way her fingers brushed the edge of the host stand, like maybe she was waiting for me to smile, to offer her that familiar warmth I used to carry for her like a second skin. But I didn't. I wasn't cold. Exactly. Just clear. "A table for one is fine," she said after a pause. "Unless you'd prefer I leave." I raised an eyebrow. "It's a restaurant, not a grudge museum." She gave a breathy laugh, half relief, half something else. Still sharp, I didn't answer, just handed her off to Mateo, my floor manager, and watched from the kitchen window as she slid into a corner booth. Her eyes scanned the room, every inch of polished walnut, every copper sconce I'd spent weeks sourcing on a shoestring budget before the investors came. Her gaze lingered on the framed photo wall near the bar pictures of the food truck, the soft open, the night we sold out under the rain. There was one photo in the corner, faded, black and white, me and her, back when the food truck was just a sketch on a napkin. And she wore my apron over her work dress as we made dumplings together on folding tables. I'd left it there on purpose. A relic, a warning to myself. She stared at it a long time. In the kitchen, I felt the pressure building in my chest, like I was still waiting for something. Maybe for her to apologize, maybe for her to gloat, maybe for her to remind me that once upon a time, we were supposed to do this together. I plated her dish myself. Pork belly, slow braised, in star anise and ginger, over sticky jasmine rice with pickled mustard greens, her favorite. Once, I added a drizzle of the chili caramel I created the night after she left, when I couldn't sleep and couldn't cry, and the only thing I could control was flavor. I didn't say a word when I brought it to her, just set it down, nodded, and turned to go. But her voice caught me. "You know, I was scared." "Right?" I stopped mid-step. "Not of you. Of myself," she said. "Of waking up 10 years from now, still scraping change for the dream of a man I couldn't help build. I didn't believe in you anymore, and I hated myself for that. So I left before I could become the villain." I turned slowly. "You didn't become the villain," I said quietly. "You became the billboard." She flinched, but nodded, like she knew she deserved that one. Maybe more. "I'm sorry, Tom." There it was, the words I thought I needed. But hearing them now, they felt smaller than I expected. I gave her a small smile, not out of pity, not out of triumph, just recognition. "Enjoy your meal," and I walked away. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally knew I didn't need her to. And somehow, that was the real revenge. The door swung shut behind me, and the hum of the kitchen swallowed everything. It was always like that inside the kitchen. The world went quiet. Not in the absence of noise kind of way, but in the rhythm of it, the chop of blades, the hiss of the walkie The clatter of steel against ceramic. It was a different language, one I spoke fluently, where I didn't need to explain myself with words or memories. I busied my hands, but my head stayed with her, Mia, sitting out there, eating food I created from the ashes she left behind. She wasn't crying. She wasn't asking for another chance. She was just present. And the part of me that had fantasized about this moment, her crawling back, begging, telling me she regretted it all, realized something chilling. She didn't want to get back together. She just wanted to be seen. She wanted to rewrite her part in my story, now that it had an audience. I'd seen it before, from distant cousins who ghosted me when I needed a loan. Now suddenly texting, let's catch up. From the investor who once called my food truck quaint, now asking about franchising. People always come back when the meal's plated. But where were they when I was gutting fish in the back of my truck at midnight? When my fingers cracked from cold prep sinks and bounced checks? That's the cost no one sees. Success is never just money, or press, or lines out the door. It's loneliness. It's the aching silence after the crowd clears, when you realize the people who knew you best either left you too early or only stuck around for the ending. I pulled off my apron, ran a hand over the sweat at the back of my neck, and stepped outside. The street was dark except for the warm glow from the billboard, humming like a taunt in the night sky. Still too broke to love. Mia, she had seen it. Everyone had. And for a while, it gave me power, it whispered. You were wrong about me. You were wrong to leave. But now, I wondered if it was more about proving something to her, or proving something to the part of me that still believed I'd only be worth loving once I had receipts. Mia had been gone for 30 minutes. Her table was cleared, her seat empty, but her glass still had a ring of red wine at the bottom. She hadn't left a note. She hadn't tried to talk again. She just disappeared. Again. But this time, it didn't hurt. This time, I didn't go chasing after her. I turned off the lights in the dining room one by one, and I whispered to no one in particular. I was always enough, even before the billboard, even before the restaurant, even when all I had was a folding table, 2 burners, and a broken heart. The next morning, the billboard was on the news. Local segment, 5-minute spotlight. A quick montage of my restaurant. Some clips from the food truck days. They'd scraped off old Instagram posts. And finally, a shot of the billboard itself, glowing against the night sky. The anchor called it a bold blend of culinary excellence and emotional catharsis. I watched it alone, seated on the empty patio with a coffee that had gone cold while I wasn't looking. I didn't know whether to laugh or roll my eyes, because that billboard, it wasn't meant for the world. It was meant for her, for Mia. But now, it belonged to everyone. A producer emailed me less than an hour later asking if I'd consider doing a feature. You're not just a chef, she said. You're a story. As if pain turned into success was a novelty. As if heartbreak didn't build half the art in the world. The interview requests kept coming. I said yes to a few, not the most. Then the email came from my father. We hadn't spoken in almost 6 years. He was the kind of man who used silence as currency. He didn't believe in dreams that didn't come with pensions. The last time we talked, I told him I was quitting my accounting job to go full-time with the truck. He said, "You'll come crawling back when it collapses." I never crawled. I just stopped calling. But now, here he was. A short email, 2 sentences. Saw you on the news. Guess you proved me wrong. Dinner, sometime. I stared at those lines longer than I should have, trying to read between them. Was it regret? Pride? A subtle demand for acknowledgement? I didn't reply right away. Instead, I walked out to the sidewalk and stared up at the billboard, the same one that had made me feel powerful and clever and seen. But standing there, I felt something shift. I thought about all the people who'd been turned away last night because we were overbooked, about the kid I hired last week who cried in the walk-in because the pressure got to him, about the woman on Instagram who messaged me, thanking me for standing up for the broke ones. And suddenly, the billboard didn't feel like power anymore. It felt like a chain, a punchline I'd already outgrown. It had served its purpose, but I didn't want to be remembered as the guy who built a restaurant just to throw shade at his ex. I wanted to be remembered for the taste of the chili caramel, the way people leaned in when they took the first bite of something that told a story they didn't know they needed. I went back inside, grabbed my phone, and called the landlord. "Take it down," I said. "Tomorrow if you can." He hesitated. "You sure? It's kind of iconic now." "I'm sure." I hung up before he could talk me out of it. Because I didn't need the world to know Mia was wrong. I needed me to know I was right. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The morning they took the billboard down, I didn't watch. I stayed inside the restaurant, sleeves rolled up, elbows deep in prep, julienning carrots, tasting broth, rolling bow so perfect you could balance a coin on top. That's what I told myself I wanted. Focus, discipline, quiet. But I lied. Because as soon as I heard the whine of the hydraulic lift outside, I wiped my hands on a towel and slipped out back, where no one could see me watch the thing come down. It wasn't dramatic. There were no gasps, no crowds, just two guys in paint-splattered jeans rolling it up like it was any other piece of vinyl. Another job, another morning, another ego erased. It hurt more than I thought it would, not because I missed it, but because I'd built my revenge so carefully, fed it for months, like a sourdough starter. Bitterness and pride folded into something bold and public. And now I was letting it go. The next week was quieter. Still busy, reservations were full. Lines still wrapped around the block on weekends. But something shifted. Customers came for the food, not the story. Fewer selfies under the empty billboard. More questions about ingredients, sauces, spice levels. I started to feel like a chef again. Not a punchline, not a headline, just a man who made good food. Until Thursday night. I just stepped into the walk-in to grab a crate of Napa cabbage when Mateo popped his head in. "You have a visitor?" I sighed. "Tell the vendor I'll settle the invoice tomorrow." "It's not a vendor." His eyes said the rest. When I walked into the dining room, she was already seated. Mia. No rust-colored coat this time. No heels. She wore a faded green jacket and no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a low knot, the kind she used to wear when she was tired and didn't want anyone to know it. She stood when she saw me. "I heard you took it down," she said. I nodded. "Yeah." Her eyes searched mine for a beat, as if unsure what she was allowed to feel. I thought I'd feel smug, like maybe it meant something, like I won, she said. "But I don't. I just feel like I miss something I never get back." I didn't say anything, because I didn't trust what might come out. She sat again, folding her hands on the table. "I wasn't brave enough to bet on you. I see that now. I wasn't ready to be bet on," I said. Surprising even myself, I was still proving things to everyone but me. She looked down, then up again. "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. Then I told her the truth. "No, but I'm not hungry for your apology anymore." Her lips parted slightly, and for a second I saw it. Genuine hurt. But then she smiled, small and real. "That's fair." I turned to leave. "Tom." I stopped. I meant what I said. "You're doing something beautiful here." I gave her a nod, not with bitterness, but with release, and walked back to the kitchen, where the air was thick with steam and garlic, and nothing from my past was on the menu tonight. The door swung behind me, and it was like slipping back into a skin that finally fit right. The kitchen smelled like seared scallion oil and five-spice pork, and my line cooks were focused, heads down, moving in rhythm, like a well-rehearsed jazz band. My hands moved automatically, checking broth temps, adjusting seasoning, wiping stray drops of sauce from the edge of a plate. But my mind wasn't in it, not entirely. Mia's face lingered, like the scent of something sweet and smoky that you can't quite name. I didn't regret what I said, but part of me, the tired part, the human part, ached with the weight of what we'd almost been. Because long before the billboard, before the betrayal, before the broken trust and bitter rise, there was a girl sitting on my counter, eating leftover dumplings and sketching fake menu items on napkins. There was laughter in that version of us, hope, and maybe the hardest part of revenge is this: even when it works, it doesn't bring back what was good. Later that night, I stood outside again, the billboard space blank above me, waiting for a new tenant. Or maybe just a new story. My phone buzzed. A message from my father. Again, I'm in town. Want to grab lunch? No preamble. No apology. Just a man who never believed in me suddenly asking for a seat at my table. I stared at it for a long time, and I realized this was the other cost. The other ghost. I'd spent years cooking in the shadow of his disapproval, turning every failure into fuel, every small victory into a whispered screw you. But now that I had something to show, something undeniable, he was willing to come back, not because he understood me, but because success demands attention, even from the people who tried to bury your fire before it caught. I didn't respond. Instead, I looked up at the night sky and made a decision. No more billboards, no more messages disguised as meals. Just food, just truth. The next morning, I met with my designer and gave her new instructions. We're replacing the billboard, I said. With what? She asked. Brow arched. I smiled. A mural. She leaned in, intrigued. Of the truck, of the early days. Me, sweating behind a grill in a busted-up food truck with open, duct tape to the window. I want people to see where this started, not who doubted it. She grinned, wide and knowing. You're finally telling your story. I nodded. Yeah, and this time, I'm not aiming it at anyone. When the mural went up 2 weeks later, it wasn't met with tweets, or gossip, or viral buzz, just slow nods from customers. Quiet selfies, parents pointing it out to their kids. And me, I watched from the window for the first time in a long time. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just proud. It was strange, the kind of silence that followed, not empty, not cold, just whole. No more DMs from people trying to guess who Mia was. No more friends texting me screenshots from forums or snide comments from folks I hadn't spoken to in years. The restaurant was still full, the wait list long, the kitchen alive. But the noise around me had finally quieted, and in that quiet, I found myself breathing differently, not like someone bracing for impact, but someone finally unclenching. I started sleeping again, not the twitchy, shallow half-sleep of someone nursing heartbreak and ambition at the same time, but real, full sleep. I'd wake up and actually feel rested. I stopped reaching for my phone first thing in the morning. I stopped checking the metrics on our page, the mentions, the chatter. Instead, I walked the floor every morning before service, touching every table, wiping down wood with my own hands, feeling the grain, remembering how, for a long time, I didn't even dream of this kind of finish. For years, I'd cooked on dented steel and eaten while standing over trash bins. Now, people toasted anniversaries here, proposals, first dates. The food was no longer the revenge, it was the reward. That realization came to me full force on a Tuesday afternoon. Slow shift. Rain tapping on the windows like an old friend. A young couple sat in the booth Mia had once taken this time, holding hands, eyes glowing. They couldn't have been older than 22, maybe college kids, maybe broke. I watched them share a plate of dumplings, laughing with that wide-eyed energy people have when they believe nothing could ever really fall apart. The girl looked up, pointed at the mural, and smiled. Was that really him in the truck? She asked her boyfriend. He nodded. Yeah, that's the chef. Guy built this whole place from nothing. She leaned forward, whispered something that made him grin. And then, I swear to God, he looked back at me through the kitchen window and gave me a small nod, not one of recognition, one of thanks. I don't know what he was thanking me for. Maybe for the food, maybe for the story, maybe just for making a place where people could believe in something bigger than their hurt. But it hit me, standing there, watching them. I used to think the measure of my worth was whether Mia regretted leaving. Now I knew better. The real measure was whether I kept going, whether I built something lasting in the space her absence left behind. And I had not just a restaurant, not just a name, but peace and God. After everything, that peace was rich, rare, and more satisfying than any headline, more than any billboard. It was mine. The mural became a landmark faster than I expected. Tourists would snap photos in front of it. Locals would nod at it like they knew the man inside the paint. It wasn't flashy, no neon, no hashtag, no dramatic tagline, just an honest depiction of a 29-year-old guy in a threadbare apron, sweating behind a grill, with his eyes locked on the food, not the camera. But what struck me most were the people who lingered, people who stood there for longer than a picture, reading into the brush strokes, seeing something of themselves. One evening, I stepped outside during a slow lull and found a woman standing there, arms folded, eyes wet, mid-40s. Maybe she wore her grief like jewelry visible, but carefully arranged. I hope you don't mind, she said, when she noticed me. Not at all. She gestured to the mural. He looked so determined, like nothing else in the world mattered. I gave a soft laugh. At the time, nothing did. She looked at me then. Really looked. It's rare. You know, people who come back from the kind of pain that swallows most of us. I didn't know what to say, so I nodded, and she let the silence be enough. Then she whispered, "Thanks for surviving. We needed this place." That night, I closed the restaurant early, not out of fatigue, but reverence. I needed the quiet. I needed to sit in my own creation and let it breathe. I wandered to the back booth, the same one where Mia had once sat, where she'd told me she was sorry, where she hadn't asked to stay, where I hadn't offered. I slid into the seat and looked around at the space that heartbreak built. The wall lights glowed warm. The open kitchen smelled like garlic oil and caramelized onions. Everything was clean, precise, earned. I took out my phone and, for the first time in months, scrolled all the way back to the first picture I had of the food truck, before the wrap, before the upgrades. Just me, a folding table, and one single customer standing under an umbrella. The caption read, "Not much now, but give me time." God, that kid had no idea what was coming. Not the heartbreak, not the long nights, not the billboard, not the mural, not the peace. He was just hungry for more, for better, for enough. I put the phone down. I didn't need to document anything else. The revenge story was over. What came next wasn't about Mia or proving something to the world. It was about staying in the kitchen, not to chase ghosts, but to feed the living. The final proof of success didn't come in the form of money or press or even praise. It came in a reservation under the name Thomas, my name, my father's name, for two. Saturday night. I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure if it was a joke, a coincidence, or some kind of cosmic dare. But I knew the timestamp, the handwriting in the online form, something in my gut told me it was him. And I had a choice to make. For years, I let his silence shape me. I wore his doubt like a second skin, mistaking it for fuel. I convinced myself that once I proved him wrong, the silence would break and something better would pour out love, respect, approval, maybe even an apology. But the thing is, you can build a palace from pain and still feel empty inside, unless you fill it with something else. Saturday came. The table was set in the back corner. Not VIP, not center stage, just private. Respectful. At exactly 7:04 p.m., he walked in, older than I remembered, not fragile, but softer, less storm, more silence. He didn't speak right away, just took off his coat, folded it with military precision, and sat. I approached slowly. Dad! He looked up. Tom. That was it. No hug, no speech, just a word. My name. Acknowledged. I slid into the seat across from him. He looked around, nodding once. You built this. I did. It's good, he said, eyes lingering on the woodwork. The photos. The light. Feels like something real. I waited, but nothing else came. No grand confession. No regrets. And strangely, I didn't need them. We ate in silence. The kind that used to strangle me now just was, and somewhere in the middle of the second course, he set his fork down and said, Your mother would have liked this. She always said, You had hands made for something delicate. I blinked. He met my eyes. I didn't say it then, but I see it now. And just like that, something unclenched inside me. Not forgiveness, not entirely, but space. He didn't ask for anything more, just finished his plate, paid the bill, and before he left, he stood at the mural outside, staring up at the younger me behind that food truck. He didn't turn around. He just lifted a hand, the smallest wave, and walked entering frame. En smijsenden. Fiensnes am hanekreknes bit meis skrien. I didn't follow. I stayed there on the sidewalk, under the mural that had replaced a billboard, under the life I had built from the bones of every no, every goodbye, every night I thought I wasn't enough. The city buzzed around me. The kitchen behind me glowed. I could hear laughter from the patio, forks clinking against plates, a child's giggle somewhere near the door. This was my revenge, but it didn't taste bitter. It tasted warm, full, finished. I smiled, turned toward the light, and went back inside.